Welcome to what's new in CabWriter 5. It's that time of year again when we release a new version of CabWriter. And as usual, we have some new functionality for you, as well as some functionality changes and some new parameters to provide you more flexibility in construction methods. We at CabWriter are very excited about this new release, and we think you will be too. So let's begin with CabWriter 5 new functionality. The first new piece of functionality we want to talk about is one-piece shaker style. This style applies to doors, draw fronts, end panels, and back panels. It's meant to emulate the simple shaker style of CabWriter, but in a one-piece design that's millable on a CNC machine. So CabWriter will produce the DXF files required to cut these on a CNC machine. So let's take a look at our typical simple shaker style and let's convert it to one-piece shaker. The model you are looking at is our typical factory default settings shaker style cabinet. You notice that the face frame parts are 5-piece parts. 2 stiles, 2 rails, and a panel. Now we're going to convert those to the one-piece shaker. We're going to start out, since we're going to mill this on a CNC machine, we're going to start out by setting up the CNC machine setup for the one-piece shaker. Down here in the left-hand corner, you see one-piece shaker style field depth. That's the depth of this field right here. And so it's 9/32. The next thing we're going to do is go to the Doors tab, and we're going to select one-piece shaker. Now you can do this for the upper as well, but right now I'm just dealing with the base cabinet. I'll go to the Draws and select one-piece shaker. And I'll go to the face frame, or I'm sorry, the panels. And for the end panels, I'll choose, I can either leave it as same as door or choose one-piece shaker. And it'll do the same thing for the back panel. One-piece shaker. So now I'm all set. I'll update that, close it. Now I'm going to redraw this cabinet. But I'm going to not use the stored defaults, but rather the defaults I just set up. So now take a look at this cabinet. Notice this end panel is a single part. It's just one piece with a field milled out of the middle so that it looks like the basic shaker style end panel. The same with the doors and draws. Notice those are one-piece parts. Now I want to add a back panel to this. And to do that, I'm going to have to edit it a little bit, so I'll unlock it, edit, and I'm going to bring this in. Well, let me see, what do I have to do here? That's 1/2. I have to add 1/4 of an inch. So I'll bring this out 1/4. And I'm going to bring that part back in here like that. I'm not going to bother doing the other end. I have to actually. So let me do that real quick. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a back panel on here. I'm going to take note of the cabinet that I'm working on, and it's cabinet C4L. I'm going to select this upper line, and I'm going to divide it by 3. I'll just type 3 into the data field. And now I'll add the vertical lines. And I'm going to add a back panel. C4L. I'm going to use the stored defaults. And yes, that's the cabinet I'm thinking of. And there you go. So now I have a back panel, also in the one-piece shaker style. So that's as simple as that. You can mill these parts on a CNC machine. And of course, they'd be made from some kind of a sheet good material, an engineered sheet good material. So now let's go on to the next new piece of functionality. For a long time now, some of our users have been creating end panels in doors, tall end panels in doors, and inserting mid rails in them using native SketchUp tools. Well, in CabWriter 5, we decided to make life easy for them. In CabWriter 5, divided bases and divided uppers can now have mid rails in end panels and doors. Now, we didn't include this functionality in standard base or upper cabinets because those are typically fairly short, 30 inches or so. And if you want a tall base cabinet or upper cabinet, you would probably use a divided cabinet anyway. You can emulate any of the base or upper cabinets with a divided cabinet. And so if you needed mid rails, that's naturally the cabinet to use anyway. So this is our solution for mid rails. And what you're looking at is a variety of cabinets with mid rails in end panels and doors. Let's just take a look at some of them. Now, the refrigerator cabinet is an upper cabinet. And it's an obvious one where you would want a mid rail because the end panels tend to be tall. Mostly because they go to the floor in most cases. So let's just look at what you need to do to create that. Like I said, it's an upper cabinet. And you'll notice for the refrigerator upper, there's 2 new parameters. End panel mid-rail width and end panel mid-rail position. And notice the position is 45 inches. That's measured from the bottom of the panel to the midpoint of the mid-rail. And I'll just show you that here. We'll go from here to the middle of this, which is right there. And notice that's 45 inches. So that's how you specify the position of the mid-rail. And the width of the mid-rail, if I just use this tool here, click on it, you will notice down here that the width is right at the bottom. The width is 3 1/4, just as it says here. Now, if you don't want a mid-rail, you would leave this at 0. Make that parameter 0, and that's an indication that there's no mid-rail to be drawn. And notice when the mid-rails are drawn, you get 2 panels. And you will see that difference in all of your production documentation. And I'll show you some of that in a bit. So that's the refrigerator cabinet. Now we can do this with any style of cabinet. For instance, well, here's the basic style. And again, this is a divided base. So I would look, let me select the back here and look at the defaults for this cabinet. And let me look at the base. So notice on the divided base, you have a door mid-rail width, the same thing here, end panel mid-rail width, and an end panel mid-rail position. So the position of this mid-rail, regardless of the style, either this standard basic style or this one-piece shaker style, you can place a mid-rail anywhere you want. And again, this is measured from the bottom of the panel to the center of the mid-rail. For the doors, the mid-rail width is different than the width of the end panels. And you can see that here, they're narrower. Now, how do you specify the position of the mid-rail for the doors? Well, let's take a look at one of these. And remember, these are divided cabinets. So I'm going to edit this cabinet. And I'm going to use the stored defaults. And this is the normal modify box selector you get, or box selector. And it's saying it's a divided base, and I'll bring over the divided base dialog box. Notice there's another column here called mid-rail. Further, you will notice that in the option column, there's an additional option. It used to be just door, draw, or none. Now it's none, door, divided door. So if you want a mid-rail in a door, you choose divided door. You can choose one or two divided doors, and then you can specify the position of the mid-rail, again, based on the distance from the bottom of the door to the center of the mid-rail. So this is a change in the divided cabinets, this new column, and this additional selection here. So it's as simple as that. No more to it. Well, I'll cancel out of here. And again, notice that you can use this in the simple style of shaker, in the one-piece shaker, or with the raised panel styles of doors and draws and end panels. Okay, so now let's move on to our next new functionality. One of the most exciting features, new features in our CabWriter 5 release is automatic texturing. Most users are aware of how important texturing is to create something that looks like a photorealistic image of their models to show their clients. Well, now CabWriter textures cabinets as they are drawn. Or you can texture a whole model at once, or just a selection of parts. CabWriter comes with 11 factory installed high quality grain textures. But we also have on our website approximately 250 other grain textures that you can download and install in CabWriter. And textures are a parameter, just like any other parameter in CabWriter. So you can change them while you're editing them. You can set them up when you first draw a cabinet. Or you can just choose a set and repaint the entire model. So let's take a look at how this works. This cabinet was drawn with default textures of gray. It'll look just like this. Notice this new column in the Materials section of the Materials tab. It allows you to specify a type of material, the name of the material, and now a texture that goes along with it. And as you choose textures, you get a sample of what that texture looks like right here in this preview. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to redraw this cabinet, and I'm going to use another set of textures. What I'll use here is rough lumber. I'll use cherry. Door and draw panels, I'll use curly maple. Slab door and draws, I'll use curly maple. End and back panels, I'll use curly maple. Carcass, we'll use maple quarter sawn. Trim and banding, we'll use maple quarter sawn. And toe kick applied faces, we'll use maple quarter sawn. And I'll update that. So I've got this laid out for the same cabinet as here. So let's see what happens. Okay, the first cabinet is going to be a standard base with draws, 2 doors, this is going to be a draw bank base. Just say OK. And there you go. Totally textured. And if you look closely at the quality of these textures, you'll see they're quite high. The other thing you want to notice is that it gets the grain direction correct. Notice for the rails, the grain direction is this way. For the stiles, it's this way. That's also true on the inside of the cabinet. It will get the grain direction correct based on our automatic grain direction capability in CabWriter. So how does this happen? Well, like I just showed you, you go to the Materials section, and you want to do this probably right at the beginning of your model. Just set up the textures. Now suppose I want to change it. I can simply say, let's see. Let me make this, mahogany. Actually, let's make it walnut. That's a panel. I'll leave that curly maple and everything else. So I'll just change the hardwood. And I can update this. I can redraw that selected cabinet. And no, I don't want to use the stored defaults. I want to use the new one I just set up. And there you go. So now we have a different grain, color, and pattern. So anything that redraws the cabinets or edits the cabinets, you could change the textures at the same time. Let me go back to this more pleasing looking color. There we go. All right, now let me bring out these defaults and just check them to make sure. Okay, they're what I want. So now I can redraw this cabinet. Say no. And there you go. Now, I'm going to back that up. And suppose I just want to texture one or two pieces. I can select them, go to Draw, CabWriter, Texture Selection. And notice it knows that these are the hardwood draw fronts, and it uses the correct texture for that based on the way I had the parameter set up. Now if I want to, I can texture the whole model all at once, and that's what I'm going to do right now. Go to Draw, CabWriter, Texture Model. And there you go. The whole model was redrawn. Well, actually, the model was not redrawn. Just the textures were changed in the model. So that's basically texturing. And like I said, you can go to our website and you will find a place on the website where you can download up to 250 different grain patterns. And in the manual, there's a whole chapter in the user's guide. There's a whole chapter on texturing. It tells you how to create your own textures if you want to and install them. Or go to our online site, download them, and install them. So this is, like I said, one of the more exciting features of our new CabWriter 5 release. Okay, so let's move on to our next new functionality. In CabWriter 5, we expanded the Create Basic Scene Set command to automatically include all necessary elevation and section views. Elevation and section views take a long time to create. So we discovered an algorithm for analyzing the model and figuring out which views were required, the minimum set required for a complete shop drawing set. Now, even though we create all of these automatically, you can still add to the set anything you want, and you can delete any of those that are created automatically, and or you can edit and modify any of the scenes and any of the scenes that are created automatically by CabWriter. But we've reduced the amount of work you have to do substantially with the creation of elevation and section views. So let's see how this works. Notice in this model that I have no scenes at the moment, none at all. In fact, you can see that down here under the Scenes tab. There's no scenes at all right at the moment. So I'm going to create all of the scenes that I need. And to do that, I'm going to use the CabWriter Create Basic Scene Set. And I get this usual dialog box that asks me where I want to put the doors and draw fronts and draw boxes. I'm going to leave them on the cut list scene and purchase part scene as I have them here. So when I hit OK, watch what happens along the top here. You have to be a little patient. This takes a while. Okay, it's completed. Now, I counted these once, and I think there's about 25 scenes that have been created. 23, 4, or 5 scenes, I forget which. But that's quite a few scenes. If you had to do those manually, that would take you quite a while. And let's just look at them. For instance, the base plan. Notice right off the bat that in addition to the hatching, we have the textures included in the base plan. And I think that's true for all of the sections and what have you. Now, you have to make a choice here. If you make shop drawings out of drawings like this, you're going to use a lot of colored ink on your plotter. So what you might want to do is, before you do shop drawings, you may want to go back to the default on all of the inputs, the default for texture on all of the inputs. And then when you create these shop drawings, these will look normal. They will just be white here, and the only thing you'll see is the hatching. Everything else will be white or gray. Now, the reason for this is hatches and textures are in fact materials. Both of them are materials, and that's what these parts are painted with. So you can't have one without the other unless you don't texture using the texture tool. But because you have this tool called Texture Model, you can simply switch all of these back to default and then texture the model with that, and then come back and retexture the model with these settings. So it's a little bit of a nuisance, but it's a function of SketchUp. We in CabWriter don't have any control over that. So that's just something you have to look out for. But that aside, we now have our usual 4 perspective scenes: our cut list scene, the rough lumber scene, which is kind of new, but I'll explain that in a moment, the DXF scene, purchase part scene, base plan, upper plan, and ladder plan. But now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sections and elevation views. Let's just look at them. This is your primary elevation, probably looking at the north wall or the wall with the... No, that's not the sink wall, that's the west wall. There's the sink wall. And why do we have 2 elevations of the sink wall? Oh, one is looking at this cabinet. And one is looking at this cabinet. Okay. So this one includes the island. And so in this view, we'll get to this in a moment. In this view, what you may want to do is eliminate all of this stuff. And I'll show you how to do that, I think in part 2. But so in this view, you just may want to eliminate everything but the island here. So when you look at this view, you'll get just the island. And you can, of course, blow that up. This view is of the east wall. That's southeast. Oh, that's the other side of the island. That's the inside side of the island. The window is over here. And that's of the refrigerator. And again, you know, you can go through these and you're going to have to modify them a little bit. And I'll show you in a second what I mean. This is the window. Okay, now let me explain this one a little bit. What you have here is let me let this do a file save here. What you have here is some backs of the cabinets that have been cut into. So let's look at the sections here. If I get rid of the sections altogether, notice that this cabinet is very shallow. It's, I don't know, it's like 6 inches or something like that. And so when it does its analysis of this, it knows it needs a section view of this. So what it does is it takes the face of this and goes back some number of inches. Well, the number of inches it's going to go back is shown down here. Notice that the elevation offset is 12 inches, the section offset is 6 inches. So the analysis looks at this and comes in 6 inches from this face. But the cabinet itself is only about 6 inches deep. So what happens is you get a section cut that is right on the face of these back panels right here. Notice this section cut right there. So the way you can fix this is bring in the section cuts again. In fact, let me just select C again. Now let's look at our section cuts. And notice this was section C. We'll see this SC. That's telling you this is the section plane that's controlling that. And I might as well explain that right now. One of the things we've done in CabWriter 5 is we've labeled all of the section planes that are used. For instance, BP stands for base plan. UP stands for upper plan. LP stands for ladder plan. And then all of the sections start with S. So this is SE. That's section E. This is elevation E. And like I said back here, the one we want to work on is section C. So what we're going to do is we're just going to move this out here. There we go. Let's go back to section E now, or section C. And now you notice you don't have that cutting of the back panels. Okay. So you will have to do a little fixing up of these sections and elevation plans, but the amount of work you have to do is rather small. Section D. That's the refrigerator, taking a section of the refrigerator. And section F. That's taking a section of the little half wall, the cabinets on the half wall. All right, so there you go. You've got all the elevation and section views. And so now let's move on to our next new piece of functionality. In CabWriter 5, we've added a new report to the CabWriter production documentation tool. Once you've created your reports and you open the folder that they're stored in, you'll notice a new schedule called Box Schedule. Now, Box Schedule is used for project costing. An awful lot of our clients, cabinet makers, determine their project cost based on the number of boxes in a model, the width of those boxes, height, depth, number of doors, number of drawers, numbers of shelves. So for each type of cabinet and for each size of cabinet and for the number of doors, drawers, and shelves, they have a budgetary costing that they can use to develop the project cost, the total project cost. So this schedule is meant for project costing. Do not use it to get information for fabrication. It's just project costing, so treat it that way. So if we open it, we get something that looks like this. There are two sections to this. Again, it's got the usual information about the type of schedule it is, the project name, customer name, timestamp. But then it has the list of all the boxes. Notice this is C10LB1. That's box 1 of cabinet 10. This is box 1 of cabinet 11. And if we get down to cabinet 15, we have box 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it'll tell you the type of box. This one's a divided base, standard upper, divided base, so on and so forth. It'll tell you the type of box, number of doors that it has, number of drawers, number of shelves, the box height, the box depth, and the box width. And then it gives you some decimal numbers for the height, depth, and width, so that if you want to put some calculations out here to calculate things based on these dimensions, you can put those equations out here. Now that's sorted by box number. The other way we've sorted it, and this can be used as a good check to make sure that everything's included here. So you can quickly go through your model and make sure that all the boxes have been included. But we've also given you a different breakout. And this time we break it out by box type. So blind corner base, there's only one of them here, but it's got the same information. Divided bases, there's 2 divided base cabinets. Divided upper, there's quite a few, well, there's 2 divided upper cabinets, but quite a few boxes. And drawbank base, so on and so forth down the line. So again, this report should be useful for project costing. Well, that's it for part 1. In part 2, what we're going to do is there's a number of new pieces of functionality, things that have been changed. For instance, the Styles and Rails report is now a rough lumber report, and we'll tell you about that. The sheet optimization settings dialog box has changed substantially and is more helpful. We'll describe that. The sheet good layouts and CNC layouts for sheet goods, we've added some functionality to that so you can move parts around. And that's useful for things like grain matching of parts. We'll talk about that. We're going to show you how to eliminate cabinets or parts or numbers of cabinets in a scene like we needed to do for section C. Oh, not section C, but I guess it was elevation. Yeah, elevation B. What we wanted to do here was get rid of everything but the island. And we'll show you how to do that with some new functionality in, or modified functionality in part 2. Construction holes have always been through holes up till now, but now you can define construction holes as partial holes. That is, they have a depth that's not through the sides. And that's useful if you want to use things like dowels and stuff like that. We have some support for CAM software where you can actually include the 3D depth of things, whether they're holes or any shape in your geometry. You can give it depth, and the depth will appear in the DXF file because some CAM software packages actually use that information. Others get confused if it's there, so it's selectable. And lastly, we'll talk about, the ladder base. Up till now, the ladder base thickness and the carcass thickness were the same, typically 3/4 of an inch. Now you can specify a different thickness for the ladder base, and we'll show you that. So until part 2, have a good day. We'll see you in part 2.